How far can Scottish football drop on the European stage? Yes, we're live on YouTube for the first ever live stream of the Friday night football pitch. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're answering the question and much, much more. Managers on the spotlight again as some clubs continue their poor start to the season. We'll preview the weekend fixtures, including the first Old Firm game of the season at Celtic Park this Sunday. And as the transfer window closes, we'll be looking at any late business done or expected to be done in the closing hours. Tonight's guest is Clyde Supporters Liaison Officer, Dean McKirdy, that's a mouthful, to help us with that and also to look at the Bullywees' disappointing start to the season ahead of their visit to table toppers East Fife tomorrow. We might well squeeze some time to look at an incident in their game at Bonnyrigg. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, who's the visually challenged Dennis Newell. This week has had me working extra hard to pay off my dues. So guys, subscribe, hit that bell on YouTube now. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon and etc. And as always, good evening Dennis, how are we?
I'm fine, thanks. Good evening, Dean.
Good evening, how are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all, mate, no problem at all.
Yep.
I think I've known you for the best part of 20 odd years now, Dean.
Yeah, I know there's not many Clyde fans' faces to remember, so it's easy to recognise everyone.
Yeah, I think when I first knew you, I looked younger than what you do now.
Yeah, I know it's been a long time. That's me, a Clyde supporter for 25 plus years now, so yep. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, Dennis. I used to run the kids club that Dean obviously took part in as a child, but obviously now fully grown up, and as I say, he's a Clyde Supporters Liaison Officer at New Douglas Park, obviously where Clyde play their home games. Anyway, Dennis, as I say, let's get on to the real serious stuff just now. Again, another disappointing. Well, thankfully it was only a night for Scottish clubs in Europe. Both Kilmarnock and Hearts essentially dropping out their competitions. Kilmarnock, that's 2 goes at the cherry. They've lost both of them. Hearts, obviously, they've really struggled at the start of the season under Stephen A. Smith, and a very disappointing result for them last night. Saw them drop into their consolation tournament as well.
Yeah, as we mentioned last week, it was tough ties, but I also mentioned as well, none of the teams, the two that you've mentioned there, the opposition was never great, although Copenhagen are, a decent team. But, I mentioned last week as well, you go and play against these teams, you need to be really well equipped if you want to defend. And that's what Kilmarnock try to do. And they paid the penalty. There's an argument to say, well, you go away from home and you defend. That's okay if you get qualified and people are doing it regular. But that's not the way the Scottish game is. We're not equipped to do that. So going there and then losing 2-0 and coming back to Rugby Park and expecting to score 3 goals, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and I did say last week, you're better going out there, showing some commitment to the game and maybe getting beat 2-0 because you've had a go at it. But at least you can hold your hands up and say, well, we've done our best. Yeah. And in actual fact, they sat in and they paid the penalty.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, no great. Hearts were just poor. I think they were there for the taking, the opposition, and they never took their chances either.
Yeah.
There's been some bad referees in these games, Cammy, and that includes Rangers matches as well, when we look at these ties that have been on recently. And some of the referees are absolutely appalling. And they're not utilising what's at their disposal in the VAR. And people are being served up with absolute rubbish when it comes to the responsibility to help clubs out with VAR when it's not actually happening.
Yeah. Dean, obviously you weren't at Bonnyrigg on Saturday, but the contentious refereeing decision on the part there, and they guys don't have the benefit of VAR, so we don't have that even playing field.
Yeah, I seen that video clip on YouTube actually on Sunday morning. Couldn't believe it really when I seen what was going on, and you get a lot of people complaining at referees even with VAR. Obviously down at our level, as you say, we don't have it, and when referees do get such decisions so terribly wrong, there's nothing you can do about it. But
But you imagine, though, how bad our game would be if you had VAR in the lower divisions. Now, you might say, well, what do you mean by that? If they can't cut their teeth without the assistance of VAR, and they go to the top flight having had VAR, there'll be a shambles. So for me, the best thing in the lower divisions is not to have VAR, so they have to make good decisions on their own, so that when they do reach the top grade, VAR will be a bonus, or should be a bonus and a help for them. And basically, that is, from my point of view, I never want to see VAR in the lower divisions for that simple reason alone, because they've got to cut their teeth and they've got to be able to do it well instead of relying on a machine.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, I think there's an argument against doing away with it altogether. But hey, that's maybe another story. But certainly, as I say, I think it was a disappointing decision. If you're on a booking, it's always risky. But certainly, as I say, you're getting disappointing decisions further down the leagues with or without VAR. So that doesn't necessarily serve any kind of great purpose at all. And certainly, as I say, Scottish sides have suffered allegedly suffered with it over the last 3 or 4 weeks, certainly. But Dean, I've asked the question there at the start: how much further can Scottish football drop? I think obviously the clubs have struggled on the European stage just now, but also we go back to the summer, and the Scottish national side definitely struggled over in Germany too, and they put a very, very disappointing performance in there, and I think that's really where it started.
Yeah, it had. It was a disappointing summer. I was over in Germany for the 3 games. The best games I went to were games that didn't involve Scotland, so that says it all, really. But yeah, disappointing. We never really had a go at it. Too defensive. Kind of expected from Steve Clarke, right enough. That's the way he plays, but obviously it was a kick in the teeth to go out the way we did.
Yeah.
Although we're starting the Nations campaign next week, and we do have a good Nations League record, although we are in the top group now. I think Scotland have won 10 out of our 16 games in the Nations League at all levels. So it's a competition that we do well in. Maybe because we take it seriously, and maybe some of our countries don't yet. But 10 wins out of 16 is a good start, and hopefully we can keep building on that.
And the thing with that competition is there is obviously points at stake. I know obviously it's no league points, but there is points at stake there when it comes to obviously Scotland's group. And obviously Scotland's clubs within Europe. The coefficient, there you go.
Yeah, that's right. And also an incentive for Scotland in this campaign is to try and not get relegated. So if we come 4th out of 4, we drop back down to B seeds. Yeah. If we stay in the top 3, so if we come 3rd bottom, 2nd bottom, or win the group, we are guaranteed, or we should be guaranteed to be pot 1 teams for the World Cup draw. Yeah. So that will massively help our chances of going to the World Cup in the USA, Mexico and Canada if we can not come last in our 14 group.
Yeah, please don't tell Steve Clarke he only needs to finish 3rd. You know what I mean? Let's be honest, you're saying about the defensive start already. That was him trying to get through the next round of the tournament. If he doesn't have to do anything other than finish bottom, not finish bottom, Christ knows what we're going to end up watching come the Nations Group games. Yeah,
I know. I'm surprised that he is still here. He's not really said much since the tournament either. So, I wasn't sure if he'd stay or not. If he was to leave the position, I don't know if I would have been too disheartened. But he's still here. Obviously, the fans will still back the team. But I think if he got off to a bad start against Poland next week, then I can see a number of fans turning on his back.
Yeah. Dennis Dean's there saying Steve Clarke doesn't say very much. All he does is want to argue with reporters and journalists.
It was a bit disappointing when he was questioned in one of the news programmes during the week, and he sort of had a bite at the guy, and I'm thinking, why? You've had a lot of glory, you've had a lot of praise, nobody's been in your back directly, and you're asked a question, and he was a bit nippy with it, and I thought to myself, is this a sign of things to come where you can't take the stick if it comes your way? But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't have been asking the question he did. I'd have been asking why he's persevered with the same team that are failures. I think the squad is the worst I have seen in my history for central defenders or the back four or whatever you want to play it. The worst. And I'm serious about that. I've tried to digest it. Grant Hanley, Mike Johnson, Scott McKenna, Ryan Porteous. Anthony Ralston, and Andy Robertson, John Souttar, and Greg Taylor. Now, I know Tierney's injured, but looking at two players that would be in my team automatically is Tierney and Andy Robertson. See the rest? I wouldn't give them house room. Grant Hanley is a flop, and McKenna, similar. And to be perfectly honest, so disappointed that he stuck with him. And when he said it, he brought the boy Max Johnson in because he had injuries. Does the man not see that they have failed Scotland as players? They're not just disappointing, they've been pathetic as a defence. Anthony Ralston, he'll not get a game with Celtic this year because the boy Johnson will play. And Greg Taylor will not get a game because Celtic have just signed a left back. So there's two of your defenders when you've got injuries that you need to rely on. They'll not be match fit. I don't know where Scott McKenna's went. He didn't have a club when he was playing in Europe, in the championships.
Scott McKenna got a 1-0 draw with Real Madrid last night, actually, in La Liga.
Yeah, well, he might, but I'll tell you what, he would never be in my squad, never be in my team. And when you look at Grant Hanley, I looked at the stats where Norwich got a bit of a kick in during the week, the other night there, and out of 22 players, he was the third lowest in rating for the performance. Now, that's what we have got to rely on to take us into European Cup ties for winning nationals. And I just think it really is the worst I've seen. And I look at it and I go, is that the best that he can dig up? And it probably is the best he can dig up. But it's quite pathetic that that's all we're having to work with. So
that's what I was going to say. They're better out there.
Yeah, does that maybe highlight the weaknesses then within the Scotland squad?
Yes, so it maybe isn't him. You know, I'm having a dig at it and I'm having a bit of a rant, but when you look at that in paper, wow, it's so disappointing. Midfield, we're not too bad. And then you look at the forward line and you just skip to the forward line and then you say to yourself, Shea Adams, come on. There's got to be somebody out there that even a youngster that could come in there and replace him and give him an opportunity, because that boy's not really contributed anything in my eyes to what Scotland need, and that's goals. Yeah. He's not an out and out finisher. He did okay with his club, but when he puts a Scotland jersey on, so disappointing. Yeah. I'd like to see the boy Conway coming in and getting a good run, because unless he gets a run, it's a waste of time bringing him into the squad. Lyndon Dykes, I'm not sure if he's still going to be fit yet. And then you've got Lorne Shankland, who I think has been off the boil. Why? I don't know. That boy could be earning 3 or 4 times the money he's earning at Hearts if he had been more committed in the last month or so. I've just not seen the best of him. And I think that's maybe why nobody's come in for him. Yeah. So I'm really disappointed with the Scotland squad. I know I went on a wee bit about it, but really, it's so poor that they couldn't have freshened up with maybe 5 or 6 bodies in there and just had a go at it and see how it works out. Because if it's the same old rubbish we've had, then he'll not be in the job much longer. Sure. Because, as Dean's actually said, punters will go on his back.
Yeah. Is that maybe the difference then between Scotland and other sides then, Dean, why Scotland have had a reasonably successful European nations group? As you say, they take it serious. Other nations will be blooding young players and bringing guys through. You know, the likes of England, you look at what they did in the Euros, but a lot of that was started in the nation leagues by bringing through younger players. Spain did the same. They had a 16-year-old who was one of the stars of the show, whereas we are left to the same old sort of, almost to quote Dennis, the same kind of dregs.
Yeah, but I guess Steve Clarke's probably not wanted to lose the past Nations League games, whereas you probably do see some other top nations are rotating their squads or trying to figure out who's one for the future. Can we play different formations and maybe just experimenting in general? Yeah. But for Scotland, I think we've had the same squad for the last few years now, which in a way isn't too bad. The players are familiar with each other. You kind of know what you're getting. But when you do underperform like we did in the summer, it just opens up questions to why we've not gave younger players a chance on the build-up to the Euros, why we didn't give a couple of players a run out at the Euros. So, yeah, I'm hoping next week there is some debuts for players. We've got Ryan Gauld in the squad now, which has been a long time coming. Yeah. Sure he'll come on. As Dennis mentioned, Tommy Conway, I'm sure, I would like to see him get a run out. Whether he does or not is another question, but I'm sure over the next 2 games we will see him. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited for Ryan Gauld. He's had a great few years in the MLS. I think last season he was in the shortlist for the MLS Player of the Season. He had something like 20. He had hold on, I got it written down. He had 12 goals and 17 assists last season in the MLS in 40 games. So
that's decent anywhere. That's it. I mean, that's a decent tally anywhere. Certainly for a guy who's not an out-and-out striker, that's decent.
I don't think our midfield's that bad. Okay, we've still got people that have decided they don't want to play again. And you've got injuries. So I think our midfield is probably one saving grace we've got.
Yep.
That's the only thing. I mean, Callum McGregor leaving is a bit of a bump to the Scottish squad, because I think they all gelled quite well. I'd like to have seen them maybe just staying another year or so, because the midfield was his strength. But when it gets to that defensive zone, we can't defend nothing. We're absolutely murder. And you'll always have oppositions, especially internationals, where they will get chance after chance. And the one I've had the rant with is the defence, and basically there's my main worry. But you can't expect the whole in the midfield to be doing the forwards job and the defence. It's just too much.
Yeah.
There was a point when we got to the Euros that I felt we're clicking, but we've had injuries, we've had various call-offs, and it's no help to manager. Yeah. But we just seem to be a bit ragged, and that defence looks pretty poor to me.
Yeah. Well, moving away from Scotland, and as I say, we touched on the kind of post-mortem of Scottish clubs in Europe. Obviously, we still have 3 clubs in Europe. Hearts and Rangers have obviously dropped down to the consolation tournaments. But Dennis, obviously, Celtic, they have 8 Champions League ties to look forward to at Celtic Park. Maybe not the most glamorous of groups, but I'm quite sure the Celtic support will take a few of the ties there, maybe Aston Villa, Borussia Dortmund. You want to run through, Dennis, for those who are unaware of who else has been drawn in Celtic's group?
You've got RB Leipzig, Borussia Dortmund, Atalanta, Club Brugge, BSC Young Boys, and GNK Dynamo Zagreb, and Slavan Bratislava and Aston Villa. Right. Remember, these ties were all done with a computer, and that always concerns me a bit, because when I look at the draws for other games, I say to myself, wow, I wish the computer had gone the right way. I mean, Rangers, when you look at their tie, I look at the ties in that, and I think there's a big bonus for this kind of game, or this kind of league. And the bonus is it's not just 4 teams in it. Yeah. That means you've got the opportunity. If there was 4 teams there, and say you get Bruges, Atalanta, Leipzig, and Young Boys, how attractive would that be? It's not great, right? But when you've got extra bodies in there or extra teams, you've got the likes of Borussia Dortmund. That's really worth a watch. And so is the Aston Villa game, because it's the Scotland versus England one. So there's an advantage, I think, with that. And I think also, teams are maybe not finding their form all the time in these games. Whereas, you've got an opportunity there because there's a good number of games still to be played in it. Then again, you look at it and you say to yourself, what the supporters are really wondering is who they're going to get and what really good teams are they going to be up against, right? Yeah. And that's when you say to yourself, we know that Celtic and Rangers, the 2 top teams, won't qualify probably at the latter stages, right? So what you're then going to say to yourself is, what teams are we going to get? I hope we really get the big guns. Mm-hmm. What does Rangers do? They have failed in their cups, and they've ended up with Tottenham and Man United. 2 great ties for them. So, you look at it, and these games will go on to after Christmas, because we used to sit and say, I wonder if the old firm will get past Europe to Christmas, whereas these games go on to January, I think, before it starts to whittle down. And there's still a good chance, even with the old firm, still to get through these ties. Yeah. So I think it's quite good. I'm not saying that the ties that Celtic have got are great. When you look at Paris Saint-Germain are playing Man City, Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid, Arsenal, there are a lot of the big guns that are all put together. But the reason I think that has been worked out that way, and I know it's a computer, is that there's a lot of teams qualify through it. It's not as if it's number one and number two. There's a lot through. So that's why you can put the big guns. Now, that's great because it's good viewing and it'll last a bit longer. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure how it goes. I have dipped my toe in it to try and understand how the fixtures are working and who's playing who fully and what happens after they play each other. And it's just a wee bit more complicated. But I will get my head around it and we can get into a bit more detail when the ties start.
Yeah. Dean, I'm going to put you in the spot. Do you understand the format?
Well, it took a lot of reading. I clued myself up yesterday before the draw started, so I knew what I was looking for when the draw was on. But that is complicated, and you're right, Dennis, that it does last until January. There's 8 teams, so there's 32 teams in the league. The top 8 qualify automatically, and then there's a playoff between positions 9 and 24.
Yeah.
To get another, so the winners of 9 to 24 play each other, then that gets another 8 teams through to the next round. So it'll be a last 16 quarter.
And then the rest are all binned. Yeah, that's right.
That's a bin. There's no demotion to the Europa League like there was in the past. So you're in it.
No, we've done that already.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very, very surprised. Obviously, that's no, I'm not even going to bother saying it. I'm going to stop myself. I'll err on the side of caution. What I will say, guys, is anybody who is watching in a live stream, remember there's a chat facility there. You can post your comments straight through to us, and we'll be able to read them out on air. If you're catching the live stream, obviously that won't be there for the podcast at a later date, which will obviously be online after this. But as I say, no, I'll err on the side of caution and I won't complete what I was going to say earlier on. Dennis, obviously on the transfer window, a lot of talk about the guy McKowen just now between Hibs and Dundee. Between Hibs Dundee and Celtic Dundee. Apologies there. Where would you like to see the guy go? Obviously, you spent a bit of your time in Dundee a number of years ago scouting up there. But where would you like to see him go? So where do you think is better for his career? Is he better staying at Dundee? Is he better getting a reasonably big money move to Hibs? Or is he going to be better sitting on the bench at Celtic?
Well, I don't really think it's a massive move if he goes for Dundee to Hibs in the state they're in just now.
Yeah,
I'm honest with that. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer. The boy goes to Celtic. You've got to go to a bigger club. It's even you look at Aberdeen or even Rangers. Yep. Rangers a great opportunity for the boy as well, you know. But no, I think you go to Celtic because there'll be a lot more money he'll get there, and players' lives are short, and you've got to chase the money. I don't see any advantage in him going to Hibs because, to me, at this moment in time, he's with a better team.
Yeah.
Whether he goes there, I don't know. I mean, they're talking about it's almost confirmed, but and it was Celtic they were talking about. So we just have to wait and see. I think it's at 11 o'clock tonight that the window closes. Yeah.
I mean, I know I work with a Dundee supporter, and obviously he reckons that the guy's a big Celtic supporter. So that's most definitely his preferred choice is Celtic. As I say, if you're getting the money you're kind of talking about.
Tell me anybody in the Premier League out with Rangers that would not back going to Celtic. Or any Scottish footballer, unless you were a real true die-hard Rangers supporter, right? Yeah. You tell me anyone that would not back going to either of the Old Firm if they came Chatham.
But the thing is, Dean, if you want to play football, you know, what do? Do you want to go to Celtic and sit on the bench? Do you want to get a game with the club that you're at, Dundee, or do you want to take the chance and move to a supposed bigger club in Hibs?
So it's a hard question to answer, really. You would think, as a player, your argument would be, even if you're not playing, you're still developing as a player because of the training facilities, the players you're playing with and training and stuff. So you would still hope that you improve your game even when you're sitting on the bench. But obviously that's hard to do. You need to be playing regular football, especially when you're at the age that McKowen's at. So yeah, I'm sure he would love to go to Celtic, but yeah, it's a hard question for him. He needs to weigh up if he wants to be playing week in, week out, or if he wants to go and sit on the bench at Parkhead and play the odd cup game.
Yeah. Well, he's not a kid. He's 26. So
that's what I'm saying. 26.
You would be expecting him to come in and go to the first team. Now, if he doesn't make it come the summer, then he could be looking, and who would take him? Hibs would take him in a minute. So, it's a no-brainer. If you go back to a situation which is on a mega scale, you look at Billy Reid, who we will go on one night, that was assistant manager to Graham Potter down at Brighton. It didn't work out with them at Chelsea. But do you think for a minute they could actually refuse the lure of Chelsea away from Brighton? I mean, it turned out to be, in my eyes, a total disaster, but it was a no-brainer. There's no way you can knock back the finances and the size of a club like that. And it's similar with this lad. He's in a position there where he can go to Celtic, and if it doesn't work out, there'll still be a Hibs waiting on him around the corner.
Yeah. Well, an hour ago, Hibs made a fourth bid for him. Celtic still have no movement on him. So that's where we are at the moment.
750,000, is that right?
Yeah, I believe so, which is big money for Hibs. Don't get me wrong. That's a big transfer fee for Hibs, particularly when we're talking about last week, David Gray potentially in a shaky nail. If his club's prepared to back him in a £750,000 transfer for another player from a Scottish club, he's more secure than we thought. Yeah,
but that's great. I'm delighted that's the case. And to be honest, the boy Luke McGowan is a good player. I think he's good, and I actually think he could break into the Celtic team. But only time will tell if that's where he ends up.
Yeah.
But he certainly would do a great job for Hibs as he's doing at Dundee.
Yeah, and that kind of money, Dean, is certainly kind of a decent amount of money for Dundee, and it's something that can strengthen their position within that Premier League.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of money for Dundee. Obviously, they'll be missing their captain, and there'll be no time to sign a replacement, really, so they'll have to factor that in. But I guess it's 750,000, maybe more, now that Celtic are in from as well. They'll be looking to have a half-decent season till January and go and strengthen the squad if they need to in January. But Dundee have done well the last season. They've been quite impressive, so I think the manager there has had a good start to his career at Dundee, so I think they'll be looking to kick on even if they do lose him.
Yeah, most definitely. Certainly will be, and obviously there's the winter transfer window as well. Should they have a few quid spare there to spend anyway. But again, before we move into anything else in the transfer window, there's nothing really dramatic. Celtic made a couple of signings. Rangers have got a loan signing, but there's nothing particularly dramatic there so far. But they'll all be looking to strengthen their sides prior to the Old Firm derby on Sunday. We'll touch on some of the fixtures just now, Dean, before we come on to Clyde towards the latter end of the show. Keep obviously all the guys who have been waiting to see your thoughts on the club. Keep a few of them hanging back, guys in the Glasgow branch and things like that. Keep them waiting to the end of the show before we introduce that. But Dennis, as always, in association with our sponsor, Kits_Scotland on Instagram, if you run through some of the fixtures this weekend that are of interest to you.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's worth much mileage and just tapping back into the results of last week. Celtic beating St Mirren away 3-0, Aberdeen beating Kilmarnock 2-0, and Motherwell, a great result, beating Hearts 3-1. That was the Sunday games, and then on Saturday, Dundee United won the game 2-0 against St Johnstone, and Hibs and Dundee drew 2 each, and a really great result. Hopefully, it's a thing for Rangers to come, was a 6-0 result against, which I thought was a really dreadful team of Ross County, but not to take it away from them. 6 goals is excellent with them going into the Old Firm game coming up. So games for tomorrow is Dundee have got St Mirren, St Johnstone playing Motherwell, and Ross County are playing Aberdeen. The first 2 ties are at 3 o'clock, and the Ross County game is at 5:45. Then you look at Sunday, and all eyes will be on the 12:30 kickoff between Celtic and Rangers. 3 o'clock for both Hearts and Dundee United, and Kilmarnock and Hibs. I'll tell you what, they're all very attractive ties. I mean, you look at them, you go, that's worth watching, because they've all got deficiencies and they've all got pluses. And you just look at maybe them all knitting together. We can look at that and say, what about Sunday fixtures taking over? But then you look at, Dundee, St Mirren, that's tasty. St Johnstone, see if they can dish up something and maybe turn Motherwell over. And then the one that will be really interesting to see what's going to happen with Ross County. They're playing up in their own neck of the woods with Aberdeen, not too far away. So, the Saturday ties are very, very good as well. But, I mean, you probably want to talk, Cammy, more about the Old Firm game, which is the Celtic and Rangers game.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, as much as we like to shy away from the SPL, and particularly Rangers and Celtic, if we can, if there is an Old Firm derby there, I think it's remiss not to at least pay it a couple of minutes. And certainly, I think it's a game Rangers need to win. Already it's a must-win game for Rangers. I don't think they can afford to lose it and drop 5 points behind Celtic, even though it's only 4 games into the season, Dean.
Yeah, it's already an important game for Rangers. Going on the back of last season's results as well, I think Celtic were unbeaten in 5 games against Rangers. So in order to win the league in May, Rangers can't afford to do that again. They need to start beating Celtic, definitely not losing to them. So yeah, they've got a lot of pressure on them on Sunday to try and turn that around, and it will be hard for them because I expect Celtic to be too strong for them. I think Rangers lack a little bit in the midfield. I fully expect Callum McGregor to win the midfield battle for Celtic as he done last season. So yeah, home advantage as well. I can't really see anything but Celtic coming out on top, but Old Firm game, you never know what's going to happen. One or two bad decisions from players or officials, then you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it is always one of these ones. I think it's probably a game Rangers, as I say, they definitely cannot afford to lose it. I'm saying a must-win game. It's definitely a game they can't afford to lose. They cannot afford to drop 5 points behind Celtic so early in the season. Because the way Rangers are playing just now, take away the 6-0 freak result last week, they just can't afford to drop so far behind Celtic, because they're going to find it very, very difficult even to make up 2 wins on them, Dennis.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a freak result. I think it's justified because Rangers are better quality than Ross County. I can be a big critic of them because I'm expecting the Old Firm to be our, starship in Scottish football. And I work with a company and the bulk of them are all English. And to be honest, it's very difficult trying to convince them that our game is not as bad. But yeah. I'd be telling lies. It is that bad in comparison with what I'm used to seeing. The Old Firm are not as good as they used to be. And you can see Rangers there are struggling. But last week's result was very, very good for them against a very poor Ross County. So, I'm not taking anything away from Rangers on that front. Tomorrow, Rangers will be up against it. And as you rightly say, the gap could open up. They could actually end up, if Dundee and Dundee United win their games, if they get beaten, they'd end up in 6th spot. Yeah. Now, I know it's early doors, but at the same time, you've got to question then why Aberdeen, Dundee and Dundee United, and even Motherwell to a point, if they do get a victory as well and they score more, then Rangers could actually drop down even lower. So it's, as you're both saying, it's a must-win for Rangers, and I can't see where they're going to get it. But, and here's the but, I've never known anyone on this planet to predict an Old Firm result because you never know who's going to turn up. I've actually thought Rangers, no chance tomorrow. I'll tell you what, it's easily turned around. Yeah. Because these guys will know exactly how important it is here with the strong support that Rangers have. They'll be demanding a result, and so will the manager. And it'll be a litmus test for him as well, because, I think he stated something like, there's not a big gap between the two teams. Well, okay, that's fine. Let's see what happens on Sunday and back up your words. So, I'm interested in that. I'm really looking forward to it, to be honest, and I'm hoping it's a good game.
Yeah. And as Dennis touched on, Dean, there should also be a good game at Dens Park. Dundee and St Mirren. St Mirren, I think, a side who many of us expected to maybe even be challenging for if not a top 6, certainly a top maybe 4 spot. But they've had a disappointing start to the season. Maybe the trials of European football. Yeah,
definitely. I think that goes to Kilmarnock as well, who have had a poor start. I think Kilmarnock are one of only 2 teams in the SPFL who have not scored yet this season.
Yeah.
So you can link that back to St Mirren as well. And I don't blame them. See, to be honest, if you're you've got European ties. I think you do have to prioritise these European ties and go for the glory. But obviously they'll be looking to turn that around starting this weekend. I'm sure St Mirren, they do have a good squad, good team, good manager. I'm sure they'll be looking at going to Dundee tomorrow and try to pick up 3 points because their season should, and I think it will turn around at some point.
Yeah.
As bad as I think Ross County are, you've got Hearts and Hibs and Kilmarnock sitting below them, which actually says a lot. Now, the point you touched on there, Dean, is the fact of Europe. And I sometimes think that it takes too much out of a team that's maybe not got the biggest staff numbers and there's not got the same rotation it can do with the big boys. Maybe it takes its toll. And maybe that is a consequence. Hibs are an exception, of course. But when you look at Hearts and Kilmarnock, without making too many excuses, maybe that is why they're sitting down there with very little points. Hearts drew their first game against Rangers, which I thought they were quite impressive, and then went down the toilet after that. They've never shown up. And then Hibs, poor at the start. I said that I didn't think David Gray had actually learned anything from last season when the defence was murder. There's still murder. So he's been beaten twice in his last game he drew. And then Kilmarnock, which to me, I just don't know where they're going. So that'll be interesting to see the bottom of that league as well, where it goes over the weekend. Yeah. So they're crucial fixtures for everybody. And as I said, you asked last week or the week before, where's the cut-off point for some of these managers? And I keep saying, look at the end of September. Then you will see, but they'll have done it themselves. The self-destruct button will be done well before I actually have my own opinion on that.
Yeah. Moving into the Championship, Dennis, away from the SPL, let's get back into some of the bread and butter stuff. And some interesting ties there. None more so, I think, than Falkirk going to Capello.
Yeah, last week's results was basically Airdrie getting beat 2-0 with Queen's Park. Ayr United again, a great result, beating Wraith Rovers 2-0. Falkirk, another steady result, 2-1 against Partick Thistle. Hamilton Accies beating Dunfermline 1-0. And Livingston drawn with Morton 1-0. 1 each. Then for tomorrow's games, Dunfermline, I've got Ayr. Morton, I've got Falkirk. Hamilton have Airdrie. Partick Thistle, Queen's Park. And Wraith Rovers have Livingston. And if you look at Dunfermline, top against bottom. Ayr United sitting at the top of the league with 4 games played, at one more than everyone else except Hamilton. And Dunfermline, who is at the bottom with 3 defeats. So that could be a mountain for Dunfermline to actually climb tomorrow. I can't see what's wrong with them. I honestly don't know what the issues are at Dunfermline.
Oh, they've obviously come up against sides who are better than them at the moment. I don't expect it to continue. I think Dunfermline starts stringing a couple of results together pretty soon. But Dean, you look at that, you got Lanarkshire Derby there at our home ground tomorrow. Hamilton taking on Airdrieonians. Airdrie a disappointing start to the season. Hamilton, we thought were going to struggle, but they've had a couple of decent results.
Yeah, Airdrie have been very disappointing. They had a great season last season, coming fourth and beating in the playoffs. Good manager who likes to play good football. They've signed a lot of players over the summer. I know they had a good win against East Kilbride at the start of the season. Was it 8-0 or something? They beat East Kilbride at 8-1 or something. But they've also had a few terrible results as well in recent weeks, getting hammered a couple of games. So I don't know how Airdrie are going to get on. As you say, Hamilton have been impressive so far, picked up a couple of wins. Good manager, John Rankin. I rate John Rankin as a person, and he was a good player as well. I think he's now finding his feet in his management role. So yeah, maybe not so surprising to see Hamilton maybe punching above their weight so far. But I can see a good game in that. I can see Airdrie maybe turning it on and Hamilton playing well as well. So I can see a few goals in that game. So that would probably be my game of the day in the Championship. If I was a neutral fan looking for a game, I would probably get myself along to New Douglas Park and hope for a goals fest.
Yeah, two best friends in opposite dugouts there between John Rankin and he's got a counterpart in the Airdrie coaching team and Brian Prunty. I think the two of them are best pals from way back. The two of them go back quite a way there. But no, you're right. I think that could be a really good game tomorrow for sure. Obviously, my local side, Falkirk, who are 2 minutes walk along from me, they've certainly had a good start to the season, Dean, and just shows that a couple of seasons ago they were really, really struggling in the doldrums of League One.
Yeah, they have. Falkirk were in there in League One for 5 or 6 seasons there. Finally got themselves back up, and I believe they're still in an unbeaten streak of 40 odd games, dating back to last season, or maybe even before that, the tail end of the season prior. So they've obviously managed to continue their momentum. They didn't even have a whole changeover of squad in the summer. They just added 1 or 2. Obviously let a couple of squad players go as well. So they've just managed to keep the same players going over. And yeah, so far so good for them. I can see them definitely challenging this year.
Who do you think is qualified when you look at that table to actually go into the Premier League and stay there?
It's a hard question, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm looking at it and I'm going,
that's loaded.
Yeah, in my head there's only maybe 2/3.
Yeah, it's a difficult question because you've seen
again, Ayr United, Falkirk, Livingston, Queen's Park, Hamilton, Morton, Raith Rovers, Airdrie and Partick Thistle, and then at the bottom, Dunfermline. Now, I can't see, I'm not going to mention the 3 because that's a bit unfair when I start to look at predictions. But the thing is, I don't think there's any more than 3 would be able to get into the Premier League if it was to be opened up tomorrow. And I'm not looking at league positions. I'm looking at the whole infrastructure and what's required to be a Premier League team. I don't think there's very many.
No, you're probably right. And you've seen the playoff final going in results basis. You've seen Ross County were far too good for Raith Rovers in the playoff final last year on a football pitch. But yeah, totally get what you're saying as well with the infrastructures of some of the clubs. So yeah, there might not be too many in the Championship who could have a real go at staying up in the Premier League if they were promoted.
Yeah,
no, I mean, I think you're maybe, as you say, you're looking at potentially Falkirk should have the infrastructure, Thistle should have the infrastructure, even Dunfermline should have as well, as clubs have been there. Maybe Livingston as well, drop down to Cali Thistle, and pretty much that's the clubs there that could almost give you a 16 or a 17 team top league if you want to expand that top league. But again, it's like England, you know. I mean, the bottom end of the Premier League, by comparison with the rest of it, is extremely weak, and it's just we're the same up here, you know. But by comparison with the top end of Rangers and Celtic, throw in Aberdeen once every 7 or 8 seasons, or Hearts, you know, who maybe have a decent run. The rest are pretty much a muchness, and they're all slogging it out down the lower end of that table. So I think it's a very, very loaded question, that's for sure, Dennis.
Yeah. Anyway, going into League One, the results from last Saturday were Annan went down 1-0 to Alloa, Dumbarton and Arbroath drew 2 each, Kelty Hearts and Inverness a 0-0, and Stenhousemuir beat Cove Rangers 3-2, and Montrose beat Queen of the South 1-0. The fixtures are Arbroath have Alloa, Cove Rangers Montrose, and Dumbarton playing Kelty Hearts, Inverness Cali Thistle are playing Queen of the South, and Stenhousemuir have Annan Athletic. The point I would make with Inverness Cali, I'd tipped him to win this division. Well, I believe they've been saved from the guillotine this week, from going out of business, really. And I think hopefully that will be upwards and onwards, because I think there's still room up in that neck of the woods, Inverness, for the Aberdeen, the Ross County, and Inverness Cali. And I'd hate to see them going to the wall, but they seem to have there's a new bit of life back into the team. So hopefully they could maybe pick up and get something for Queen of the South, who obviously got beat last week. And again, that's a team that's maybe been tipped to be in that top section, which they are at the moment in time. But it only takes a couple of defeats and you can slip back down to the bottom.
Yeah. Dennis is quite right there, Dana, what he's saying about clubs up north. Always a good away trip, particularly for fans of smaller clubs, you know, going to likes Inverness or Cali or Elgin City or Cove Rangers, you know. So it's always obviously an all-day trip to go there, but he's right. You know that the Highland leagues are able to sustain quite a few clubs up there now.
Yeah, the Highland League teams have done well since they've came up. I think it's really only Elgin who never have been out of League Two since they've came up from the Highland League. But yeah, it's good to see Inverness have managed to sort themselves out. I believe it was their ex-chairman or ex-director came back in and helped save the club going into administration. I believe I seen a report in the newspaper today that Duncan Ferguson's took a big pay cut as well to his wage to what it was when he first came in 6 months ago as well. But yes, it's always good to see teams survive. I know, being a Clyde fan myself, we've had a few scares in my lifetime, and I know how bad it makes you feel thinking your club's going to go to the wall. So yeah, I wouldn't wish it on any fan really to think that their team might go down.
It doesn't matter how many there is. There's people who are dedicated to their club, and whether it's 50 or 100, junior, amateur, whatever, you don't want to see clubs going to the wall for whatever reason. And unfortunately, the climate we live in nowadays is all driven by money, and it really is difficult for most clubs to survive nowadays. But there's a lot of them managing to do it now because they're self-sufficient. They're not relying on television, etc. So, I'm happy to see them stay in that division because they've got a big battle there. They're sitting in the 8th spot there now, only having won one game and drawn 3. Kelty, just for a bit of info, is Kelty are sitting at the top of the league with 8 points, Alloa 8 as well, Queen of the South 7, and then Montrose 6. At the bottom, you've got Inverness on 3, in the 8th spot, Arbroath with 2 points in 9th, and then Cove Rangers, who are really struggling now with 1 point. I've got a friend who hopefully will come on in the next, I think he's on holiday shortly, who will come on and give us a rundown on Cove Rangers because he's close to that, and also Aberdeen, and we'll maybe be able to pick the bones out of what's going wrong with that club. But we'll do that in the next 3 weeks or so, I hope.
When you look at the state of the clubs down the bottom of that, Dean, it's scary to think that only last season, or sorry, not last season, 2 seasons ago, you had Inverness and Arbroath both trying to compete for a playoffs, or competing in a playoff spot to try and win that spot to the Premier League. And now you look at them, they're both bottom of League 2.
Yeah,
League 1.
Yeah, League 1. Yeah, it's still early days, right enough, as we've said. But yeah, I know, Dennis, you said you tipped Inverness at the start of the season. Yeah, my money was on Arbroath to go straight back up, so that's 2 of the teams down the bottom of the league. But yeah, I expect both of them to...
It's a long way. It's a long way. Again, it's back to what we touched on earlier about managers and giving time. And, it is early on. And they're finding their feet. And, let's keep reviewing it every week and see where we go without losing the plot and who's going where.
I think it is right that that Duncan Ferguson takes a pay cut right enough, because he's certainly, unfortunately, not done anything to earn a big wage. That's for sure at the moment.
Not at all. They could spend that on a couple of players. What he was earning.
Yeah.
Okay, League 2 gives us last Saturday was Bonnyrigg Rose against Clyde.
Shut up, you.
Right, go on to in a minute. The big Clyde 2-1. 2-1 it was, Cammy, wasn't it?
That finished 2-1, yeah.
Forfar went down 3-0 to Edinburgh City. Spartans and Peterhead had a goalless draw. Stirling Albion lost 4 goals to East Fife. And Stranraer and Elgin drew 1 each. And what you've got in the fixtures for tomorrow is Bonnyrigg Rose are playing Stranraer. East Fife playing Clyde. Edinburgh City have Peterhead. Forfar Athletic playing Elgin City, and Stirling Albion, are playing Spartans. Well, you guys, that's your division. Peterhead are sitting at the top, East Fife in 2nd, then Elgin, Stirling, Spartans, Edinburgh City, Bonnyrigg Rose, and then 8th is Clyde, and then Stranraer and Forfar. Well, you're no bottom of the league, Cammy. You've got one. You look at the divisions, no matter where you are. You just look at it's a two game swing, and basically you're up there in the pack.
Yeah,
nothing's lost at this moment in time, but it certainly helps if you've got the points in the bag like Peterhead have.
Yeah. What I will say, Dean, and I certainly hope you agree. I think Clyde have almost been unfortunate I know you weren't at Bonnyrigg last week, is what we've said. Obviously, you had an event on the Saturday that stopped you coming along. In all honesty, Clyde should have been out of sight at half time in that game. You know, they had enough chances to win 3 or 4 games, and unfortunately could only take the one goal. Logan Donaghy through. I have lost count of the amount of one-on-ones that Clyde have failed to put away this season, and it's only really taken one of them a game to see a swing. As far as I'm concerned, they lost 2 weeks ago to one of the poorest sides I have seen in the division, in the shape of Stirling Albion. They were 100%. Honking. They were absolutely dreadful, and yet they managed to get out of there with a 2-0 win.
They never even got out the half the whole game. They were out of half twice, and they scored 2 goals.
Yeah, and only one shot.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, two goals with one shot, which takes some doing. Yeah. And last week, as I say, it was the same again, same old story. Clyde dominant in the first half, should have been out of sight. As I say, they could have had 4 or 5 by half time, and again, Bonnyrigg barely ventured at their own half. The sending off, I think if you're on a booking, you're very, very careful, and I don't think there's any doubt he has made contact. Maybe the slightest, but he's made contact with the defender's head with his arm. Referee, I don't think, was left with any choice but to send him off for his second bookable offence. And with 10 men battling against the wind, battling against some real, shall we say, stars in the crowd, Clyde were always up against it as well, Dean.
Yeah, disappointing result for us. Speaking to people after the game and stuff, I quickly realised that we did miss a few chances in the first half, which we've been doing. It's the story of the season so far, missing too many chances, not scoring when we're in top, and then conceding poor goals at the other end.
Yeah.
Even though our defence is arguably the best defence we've had in a number of years, we've lost so many soft goals this season already. So that needs adjusting. At the other end of the pitch, we've actually got 3 or 4 good strikers who I'm sure would get into almost every team in the league this season. But we just can't seem to find who the best partnerships are, who should be starting. Ian McCall still rotating the team. He's making 2 or 3 subs every half time. So it's a challenge. He doesn't know his best 11 yet.
Yeah.
And we don't know a number 1 striker. We've got Jordan Allen, obviously, who's scored a lot of goals for Clyde in the past, came in, helped save the club last season. Big Logan, obviously a centre-back by trade. Up front this season, looks good in spells. Obviously had that amazing game away to Partick Thistle at Firhill when he looked like a world beater as a striker. Yeah. But yeah, it's difficult. I personally don't know who should be leading the line for Clyde. So Ian McCall's obviously got that challenge as well. And yeah, I don't know. It's something that needs figured out soon. He's going to have to choose the right starting 11 at some point, and hopefully the team can kick on from there.
My thing with watching the two of them, and I mean, you say about rotating, and it's almost at half time or 60 minutes into the game, it's no working, so he pulls Jordan Allen off and brings Donaghy on, or he pulls Donaghy off and brings Jordan Allen on. Jordan Allen, to me, looks like a striker who can't play, who really, really struggles to play with his back to goal. Yeah. You know, I think he struggles to hold the ball up and bring other players into play. His first touch at times leaves a lot to be desired, and that's me being quite kind, I think. But I thought against Stirling Albion, he looked the most likely to score, and yet again at 60 minutes into the game, Ian McCall feels that desire to rotate the strikers. And when Donaghy came on, he really looked so out of sorts, and Clyde kind of fell away against Stirling Albion.
I think that game was there. We needed Jordan Allen was the best option between him and Donaghy, because the game needed movement, and needed some pace, and needed players to draw defenders out of possession, and Jordan Allen was bringing that. But as you say, it gets to the last half an hour, Big Logan's there, he's feeling he needs to make the change, where I think he got that one wrong. Jordan Allen was the one making things happen, even though he didn't really have many clear-cut opportunities himself. He was still causing havoc between the defence by taking them out of possession. But when we bring Big Logan on, it's a bit too static. So they're back 4 now. in their shape. There's no runs coming off them. So it's probably a wee bit easier for Stirling Albion in the last 20 minutes when Logan was on. But, I mean, there's no selection headache for Ian McCall tomorrow because Logan's suspended. And I think that will help Jordan Allen see, as a striker, knowing that you're going to get 90 minutes. You're less likely to start snatching at things. You're being a bit more composed. So I think tomorrow will be when Jordan Allen finally gets on the score sheet this season, just having a wee bit of freedom, knowing that he's got a 90 minutes in him and he's the man tomorrow. And then Logan's going to have to work hard and get himself back in if Jordan Allen does score a goal or two tomorrow.
I think.
It's Clyde
Dennis, on you go.
In the league, though. I mean, you look at it now, and there's teams above you that maybe a little bit more consistent than Clyde. But if I can just say that the games you've got coming up after this week, and you've got to, I always look at whenever I was managing, I always looked at the league fixtures to say we'll get points there, we'll get points. In most cases, I'll go none. But in reality, you would look at games that you can possibly get something out of it, right? Now, I'm looking at the fixtures you've got for September. So tomorrow is a toughie, right? Yeah. Second top of the league. Then you've got Edinburgh City. There's maybe 3 for you, okay?
Should be.
Then
but they've got a striker in for them.
Right, okay. But let's look and be positive. There you've got 3 points. Then you've got Elgin City. Now, Elgin City have started well, but they had a draw last week. So maybe they're starting to be in the slippy slope. Let's say you could take 1 out of that. So that's the next one at home, remember. And then you look at the other one you've got, which is a real toughie. You're way up to Peterhead. So say you get nothing out of that. So if you get 4 points and maybe a draw tomorrow, right, that's 5 points. That takes you to 9. So it's not the end of the world between now and the end of September, providing the teams round about you drop points. And that's the positive side you've got to maybe try and look at.
We've looked at every other side in the table and every other review or preview we've done, and we've said it's early doors.
Yes.
It's early doors for Clyde yet, and there's a long way within this division. My thinking is, and I'm the first to admit, Dean, I've not been at many Clyde games the last number of seasons for one reason or another. I've got a wee bit of resurgence this season and actually had been enjoying some of the football I've been watching. Yeah. But as I say, it is early doors, and I think it only needs a break. I mean, it's daft. It only needs the break of the ball. It needs it to go in off of Jordan Allen's backside, or a fluky deflection. Or as I say, one of these one-on-ones. We've had at least one one-on-one every single game I think we've watched this season, and we haven't. The only one we've taken was Logan at Firhill. Everything else, we have hit the keeper, we've put it wide, we've put it over the bar, we haven't looked like scoring. I think it only takes a break of the ball for things to turn. And perhaps as well, Dean was talking earlier on there about the striking options that Clyde have got. Clyde have got too many options at the back. You're talking about Scotland struggling for a centre-half, Dennis. Clyde have got 3 of the best centre-halves in the league. You can't get 3 centre-halves playing alongside each other unless you're going to go 3 at the back, Dean.
Yeah, that's another issue he's got. We've got our best player in our team, Lee Hamilton, the captain, best centre-back in the league in my opinion. He's playing it right back because he's wanting to get all these 3 centre-backs into the team. It's not been working. I understand why he's tried it. Maybe you're coming up against some physical teams. You're wanting 3 big boys there. We're not the biggest of teams. That's maybe a weakness we've got. We've not got many tall players, so he's trying to play these 3 centre-backs, shoehorning them into a team where it doesn't work when you've got maybe a couple of better options going forward in your right-back position. So, yeah, that's something, in my opinion, needs to change, although I can't see him changing it tomorrow. I think he'll stick with the 3 centre-backs playing because these 5 are a bit physical. But yeah, that is another option. And as you say, Cammy, I do expect the tide to turn at some point. We've got too talented a squad not to start winning games. So I'm just hoping it just turns soon. And hopefully, as you say, a goal off the backside can be the catalyst for a turn in form.
Yeah, I think it does need to change because, I mean, as we're both aware, fans have been giving McCall a wee bit of pelters. A couple have been turning. Certainly, last week, it's as loud as I've heard against Dean McKirdy at games from certain sections. Last week, I think, was really quite a disappointing game for events off the field as well. We had obviously fans, as I say, giving it pelters. A lot of interchange between opposing fans last week, something I haven't seen to such an extent, particularly at a Clyde Bonnyrigg game. I would expect to see that at Clyde Thistle, Clyde Rate. You know what I mean? I wouldn't expect to see the kind of the vociferousness between the fans at a Clyde Bonnyrigg game, and that led, I think, to an instance last week. And again, neither of you two guys saw it. I certainly didn't see it. I just saw the reaction of the Clyde support, where there was an allegation of a racial slur by a steward level at a section of the Clyde support, and I managed to get a comment from Bonnyrigg where pretty much they're saying, look, you wouldn't expect us to comment on anything, so their comment pretty much was no comment, Dennis.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I don't know the state of play, but I look at Bonnyrigg Rose, and I don't know what the stadium's like now, but I remember playing against him 100 years ago.
It probably looks much the same as it did 100 years ago.
And that's the point I'm going to try and make. So what you would probably find is that the stewards are maybe local in relation to they're no big organisation that's employed them, and maybe, just maybe, they've had a wee bit of maybe even a drink. You don't know. There's a lot of permutations.
At the risk of being inappropriate here, I don't think anybody could accuse the steward of being local.
No. Okay.
Well, I don't think anybody could say it was local.
The club should be dealing with that, and to be honest, they should make the inquiries. Unfortunately, that's the society we've got.
If they have made inquiries, they will keep these inquiries to themselves, and I fully respect that. I think fair play to Bonnyrigg for coming out and giving me a statement, or giving me an email where pretty much, as I say, I'm saying that the comment was pretty much no comment. It was along the lines of, if we have had to make an investigation, you would fully expect us not to make the results of that public. And as I say, I fully respect that. What I will say is, had the shoe been in the other foot, I don't necessarily know that the stewarding would have been as gentle had that been a supporter who had made the allegation, who had made the alleged remark.
Has Clyde Football Club inquired about this?
I don't know.
Well, again, that's
I don't know. As I say, the less said about that, the better.
Support. Yeah.
Sorry?
Well, you would imagine that the Clyde Football Club itself would ask the question, so that the two clubs liaise and you sort it out from that, rather than potentially an outsider, which you are to a point because you're no part of that board. Then I think it's the two clubs that should sit down and sort it out and feedback what should be the outcome. I don't know, but it's not nice to see that, and it's worse because there's a small crowd there, and you hear it probably a lot clearer than anywhere else. Yeah.
As I say, certainly never heard anything, but the reaction certainly indicated that something had occurred.
Yeah.
And that we'll leave it at that, I think. So that's pretty much us.
Mm-hmm.
Dean, anything else that you would like to bring up? Anything you feel that we've not touched upon? Anything involving Clyde or involving yourself?
No, so obviously if there's any Clyde fans out there listening, I do the half-time crossbar challenge, so if you've never done it before, get yourself signed up. You can win £100 by hitting the bar from the edge of the edge of the box. So if you're listening and fancy giving it a go, just speak to myself, or you can get the tickets online.
There's guys on 25 grand a week at the Old Firm that are doing that regular.
I know. Well, maybe the Clyde Strikers this season would be able to hit the bar instead of hitting the goal. So, yeah, just on League Two, I think it's only right that we give Edinburgh City a mention for their 3-0 win away to Forfar. I don't think anyone really seen that coming. So, I think they deserve a lot of credit. Probably the standout performance of the week last week was from Edinburgh City. So, surprised.
And I think that was a hat trick, was it not?
Might have been. I can't.
Yeah, I think it was a hat trick by a former Clyde player, I'm led to believe.
Well, I've noticed he scored a couple already this season, so hopefully he doesn't score against us in the next league game that we've got against Edinburgh City in a couple of weeks. But well done Edinburgh City, and hopefully it'll be Clyde too, I think, are a standout performers this week.
Yeah, I must admit, I quite fancy. I think looking at the last two games, I fully expected Clyde to take 6 points from them. Even last week after the Stirling Albion debacle, I still fully expected Clyde to take the 3 points last week.
Yeah.
And certainly, and at half time, I thought it was a stick on. But as Dennis was saying, the pitch there was brutal. It's more ruts. And divots on it than I think one of your golf courses up at St Andrews, Dennis, you know. In fact, they're probably more certainly flatter than what the pitch was. But it's the same for both teams. The one thing is, it was a grass pitch last week, and I don't think Clyde are used to playing in grass.
Mm-hmm.
No,
that's a big advantage. Yeah,
not at all. I think it's only August and the pitch, the ball already is bobbling all over the shop at Bonnyrigg, so you see what it's like at the turn of the year when it's cold and rainy. It gets even worse than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, finishing on a note, Cammy, just so people know the fixtures coming up. Thursday, the 5th of September is what we touched on right at the start. Scotland are playing Poland in the National League and the Nations League, sorry. And then on the Sunday, Portugal are playing Scotland. And that'll be a great game to watch. It really will. Yeah. I mean, I've given them a bit of a kicking, and I'm hoping the defence shore themselves up, but I'll not hold my breath in it. And I just hope that we can get something from it. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, guys, thanks very much for joining us. I'd like to say thanks very much to Dean McKirdy. Dean, it's been an absolute pleasure. You giving us your knowledge on Scotland, obviously the rest of Scottish football, and certainly your beloved Clyde. And it's been great to have a blether with you tonight, and I will see you no doubt tomorrow up in Fife. So thanks as always. As I say, chance to give yourself a plug, any social media stuff, any socials. Where can people go ahead and follow you and things like that?
Just on my Twitter and my X account, just so you can follow my name, or it says I'm the supporters liaison officer on that as well, so you can just get me on Twitter. That's about it.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me on as well, Cammy. It was nice to chat, and Dennis as well. Nice to chat.
Cheers, Dean. Good to meet you.
Thanks very much. Definitely appreciate it. Thanks as always to you, Dennis, as well. I know you don't want folk to follow you, so I'll not ask you where they can get you. Just to let you know, next week I will be here, but I won't be here. So it's me, Dennis, and Barry Young who will be with you next week. The live stream will be starting at 6 p.m. next week, not 7, but the podcast will be available straight after, because as we always say, just remember, it's all happening on the pitch. Thanks very much, guys. Good night.
Good night.
I'm getting used to this.